At my own birthday party, my mother whispered to my sister, "While everyone's here, go and change." But she didn't mean her dress. She meant the locks on my apartment. I later found the $2,000 transfer my mother sent to a nosy technician, meant to retrieve something belonging to her from my home. She called it fixing a mistake. The law would soon call it a crime. My name is Isla Hayes. I turned 31 today. I spent the last 8 months of being 30 sleeping on a cot in a high school gymnasium turned command center in Central Florida, coordinating supply chains for a hurricane recovery effort that felt like trying to glue a shattered mirror back together in the dark. I work in logistics for the Civil Support Reserve. Before that, it was wildfires in California. Before that, a floodplain in Missouri. I am trained to look at chaos and see a critical path. I find order. I manage the storm. Today, I was back in Charleston, South Carolina, and the storm was my mother. The air in the cafe was thick, a heavy blanket of dark roast espresso, caramelized sugar, and the unmistakable low-tide brine of the Ashley River just outside the windows. We were at La Mole, a place with distressed wooden floors and exposed brick that tried to look rustic but charged $20 for a slice of avocado toast. It sat right on the marina, and the tall, swaying masts of sailboats cut dark lines against a bruised purple sky. Yellow filament bulbs hung low over our table, casting everyone in a warm, jaundiced light. It was the light my mother, Margot Vance, had specifically requested. "It's just softer, don't you think?" she'd said to the manager when we arrived, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "So much better for pictures. We must get a picture for your birthday, Isla, to show everyone you're home safe." She smiled, and the manager practically tripped over himself to agree. Margot's smile was a precision instrument, designed to manage, to control, to direct. She was a woman who didn't just enter a room. She assessed it, found its weaknesses, and redecorated it to her liking. She was wearing a crisp white blazer, her blonde hair perfectly smooth. She was the CEO of Kestrel Supply Group, the family's private relief and logistics company. It was the business she and my father had built, the business I had pointedly not joined. My father, Colin Vance, sat opposite me, a retired Navy man. He had the disciplined posture and the 1,000-yard stare of someone who had spent a lifetime looking at horizons. Now, in his retirement, that horizon seemed to be whatever Margot pointed him toward. He was nursing a black coffee, his gaze fixed on a yacht maneuvering into its slip. He was present, but not accounted for. And then there was my sister, Tessa. She sat beside my mother, a pale ghost absorbed in the blue light of her phone. She was 24, and she still looked like a teenager caught doing something wrong. She had barely made eye contact with me since I'd landed, offering a hug that was all sharp angles and apologies. She was already working at Kestrel, filed under some vague title that I knew meant Margot's assistant. "So, the new house," Margot said, cutting into a croissant. She hadn't asked. She'd stated, "You're all moved in?" "It's mostly boxes. Mom, I was only there for a week before deployment," I said, sipping my water. The new house was a small condo downtown, the first place that was truly 100% mine, my name on the deed, my escape hatch. "Well, we'll have to get it properly sorted. Tessa and I can come over tomorrow, really get it organized." "That's okay. I can handle it." "Nonsense," she dismissed, waving her hand. "We'll handle it." "And how is Kestrel doing?" she asked, turning the question on herself. "Wonderfully. Actually, we just landed a major federal contract. Things are expanding." My father nodded into his coffee. "Good contract." "It's all fine," Margot said, her voice bright and final. It was her favorite phrase. "It's all fine." It was a statement, not a description. It was the verbal equivalent of a locked door. Whatever was behind it was not up for discussion. "That's great, Mom," I said, the polite script of family. A waitress, sensing a lull, appeared with a small slice of cheesecake, a single, unlit candle was stuck in the center. "Oh, lovely," Margot beamed. though her eyes were already scanning for the manager. "Isla, make a wish." The waitress struck a match. The small flame flickered, reflecting in the dark windows. I looked at the three faces at my table. My mother, poised and smiling, already framing the photograph. My father, detached, observing the flame as if it were a distant signal light. My sister, her thumb frozen over her phone screen, her face tight with a tension that had nothing to do with my birthday. I closed my eyes. For 8 months, my wishes had been for generators, for clean water, for a clear signal, for one day without a new catastrophe. Now, sitting here, I wished for something simple. Let this be normal. Just for one night. Let it be real. I blew out the candle. The table clapped. A small, polite spatter of sound. The waitress smiled. "Happy birthday." "Thank you," I said. As the waitress turned to clear the plates, my mother leaned across the table. She didn't lean toward me. She leaned toward Tessa, her voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial murmur. The ambient noise of the cafe, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clatter of silverware should have swallowed it, but I am trained to listen for the anomaly, the crack in the wall, the whisper in the static. I heard every word clearly. "While everyone's here," Margot whispered, her eyes fixed on Tessa. "Go and change. Her locks." The words hung in the air. They didn't make sense. Change her locks. My locks. I watched Tessa's face, all the blood drained from it. Her phone clattered onto her plate. "Now." Her voice was a small, strangled sound. The panic in it was real. Margot didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She just held Tessa's gaze. It was a look of pure, cold command. It was the look that said, "Do not question me. Do not embarrass me. Go." I felt my heart kick. A heavy, muffled drum against my ribs. The spoon in my hand, the one I'd used for my first coffee, trembled. I set it down in the saucer, but the clink of metal on porcelain was too loud. I looked at my father. He was stirring his coffee. Stir, tap, stir, tap. He was a master of strategic ignorance. He had survived decades of marriage to my mother by perfecting the art of not hearing the things that were said right in front of him. He heard it. I knew he heard it. He kept stirring. Tessa fumbled with her purse. She stood up, her chair scraping against the wooden floor. The sound was violent. A raw grating cut through the cafe's polite hum. I have to go," she stammered, not looking at me. "I forgot something." "Of course, dear," Margot said, already turning away, her smile bright for the rest of the room. "Don't be long." Tessa was already gone. A blur past the hostess stand and out into the humid Charleston night. My mother picked up her napkin. She turned to my father. "Colin, did you see the new listing at the yacht club, that 60-foot cruiser? I think we should take a look." She was papering over the hole. She was rebuilding the wall before the dust had even settled. She was managing the narrative. I sat there, my 31st birthday, my welcome home party. The cheesecake sat in front of me, the wax from the candle already hardening. I felt the training kick in. Assess the threat. Do not react. Maintain operational calm. I raised my hand. The young waitress hurried over, her face anxious. She knew something was wrong. People always know. I gave her a smile. It felt like cracking plaster. "Could I get another coffee, please?" I asked, my voice even. "Just black." She nodded, relieved to have a simple task, and hurried away. My mother was talking about boat slips. My father was nodding. I picked up my water glass, the ice clinking against the side. I brought it to my lips, my hand perfectly steady. Inside, I started to count. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. Exhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's what I do when the comms go down in a storm. It's what I do when the ground starts to shake. It's what I was doing now, in a quiet cafe, surrounded by my family. The first tremor of a new disaster had just hit, and I was sitting at ground zero. The rest of the birthday dinner was a performance. I stayed for another 20 minutes, exactly long enough to finish the black coffee I had ordered, a bitter, Scalding punctuation mark on the evening. My mother, having successfully dispatched Tessa on her bizarre errand, pivoted seamlessly to discussing renovations for their house on Kiowa Island. She was a master of normalcy, wielding it like a shield. My father, Colin, offered the occasional or right. His eyes glazed over. Already somewhere else. I excused myself. Citing jet lag from the 8 months of deployment, it was a perfect, unimpeachable excuse. Of course, darling, you must be exhausted, Margot said, leaning in to kiss the air beside my cheek. We'll see you tomorrow. Then, we'll come over around 10. We'll sort out those boxes. We'll see, I said. My father just nodded, his hand half raised in a wave. The drive from the marina back to my condo building was quiet. The streets of Charleston were draped in humid, salty air. The gaslights of the historic district blurred in a halo of moisture. I drove with the windows down, trying to replace the thick, artificial atmosphere of the cafe with something real. My mind was trying to solve the logistics of my mother's command. Go and change. Her locks. How it was after 8 o'clock on a Saturday night. You don't just change locks. You call a locksmith. It requires an appointment. It requires authorization. I was the owner. They couldn't do it without my consent. Unless Margot had planned this, paid someone in advance, set the time for my birthday dinner, knowing I'd be occupied, or unless Tessa still had the spare key I'd given her, the key I'd told her to put in my desk after I got back. Had she, I couldn't remember asking for it. If she had the key, she wouldn't need a locksmith. She would just... What let one in it felt insane. It was a violation so profound, so disproportionate, that my mind kept rejecting it. Why to what end? To organize my boxes. It was an act of aggression disguised as maternal concern. A classic Margot Vance maneuver. I parked in my assigned spot in the garage, the concrete cool and damp. I sat for a moment in the silence. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I'd misheard. Change your socks. Change the... stocks. No. I knew what I heard, and I knew the look of cold panic on Tessa's face. I got out of the car. My phone buzzed in my hand as I walked toward the lobby elevator. It was an unknown number, a local 843 area code. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some instinct, the same one that tells you a storm is turning, made me answer. Isla Hayes. The voice was male, professional, and clipped with stress. This is Isla. Ms. Hayes, this is Mark Jeffries, the night manager for your building. My stomach instantly tightened. What's wrong? Ma'am, there's been an incident at your unit. The police are here. I think you need to come home. I'm in the garage. I'm on my way up. I'll meet you at the elevator. He hung up. The short walk from the garage elevator to the main lobby felt like wading through wet cement. Mark was standing there, his face pale under the fluorescent lights. He was wringing his hands, his blue blazer rumpled. Ms. Hayes, thank God. They're upstairs. Unit 305. What happened? Mark. A neighbor, Mrs. Petrov, in 307. She called down about 20 minutes ago. Said your front door was open. Just ajar. She called out. No one answered. She called me. I went up, and, per protocol, I called the police. They're here now. He ushered me into the resident elevator, his key fob shaking as he pressed the button for the 3rd floor. My heart was a heavy, cold stone in my chest. Tessa. Did she leave the door open? Was she that flustered? The elevator doors opened onto my hallway. It was quiet, but the air felt charged, and there, standing in front of my open apartment door, was a uniformed Charleston PD officer. He was older, with a face that had seen too many long nights. He looked up from his notepad as we approached. Officer, this is the resident, Ms. Isla Hayes, Mark said, his voice too loud. The officer nodded. Ma'am, I'm Officer Riley. Can I see your ID? I fumbled for my wallet. My driver's license. He took it, shined his flashlight on it, and handed it back. You live here alone, Ms. Hayes. Yes. I've been away. On deployment. I just got back 2 days ago. We did a sweep of the apartment, he said, his voice a flat monotone. It's clear. No one's inside. What happened? Was it a break-in? That's what we're trying to determine. He gestured toward my front door. We're checking the lock. There's no sign of forced entry. No Jimmy marks, no drill holes, no broken jamb, nothing. He looked up at me. Whoever came in, they didn't force their way. They used a key. The words landed like punches. A key. Who has keys to your apartment? Ma'am. This was it. The question. This was no longer a family dispute. This was a police report. I do, I said, my voice sounding distant. My set, which is right here. I held up my purse. Anyone else? Family friends, maintenance, a cleaning service. The building has a master key, I assume, I said, looking at Mark. Mark nodded quickly. We do, but it's on an electronic log. We ran it immediately. No one from maintenance has accessed this unit in over 6 months. Think hard. Ms. Hayes, Officer Riley said, his gaze steady. My sister, I said. The word felt like gravel in my mouth. Tessa Vance. I left a spare with her while I was deployed, in case of emergencies, a pipe burst, something. And where is she now? We were at dinner. For my birthday, she left early. Do you have a reason to believe she would enter your apartment without your permission? Was I going to say it? My mother told her to change my locks. How could I possibly explain that? What would that even mean? No, I said. No, I don't. Anyone else? I hesitated. My mother, Margot Vance. She doesn't have a key, but when I first moved in, before my deployment, I had a small combination lockbox on the door handle for contractors. She knew the code. Is the lockbox still there? No, I took it down. I think I did. Honestly, the last few weeks before I left are a blur. Officer Riley made a note. Okay, let's go inside. Tell me if you see anything obvious. He pushed the door wide open. My apartment, my new home. It was filled with boxes, just as I'd told my mother. Stacks of them. Labeled kitchen, books, bedding. It was not ransacked. Nothing was smashed or overturned. This was not a robbery, but it was violated. The cushions on my sofa were moved. The lid to the large plastic storage tub that held my winter gear was unclipped and set aside. The door to my small utility closet was open. It was a search, a quiet, methodical search. Do you see anything missing? Riley asked. Laptops, jewelry, cash. My laptop is in my bag, I said, patting my shoulder strap. I don't keep cash here. The jewelry, I don't know. But my eyes were drawn to the kitchen island. It was a large granite slab, and it was completely clear, except for one thing. In the exact center of the island sat a plain white business envelope. It was sealed inside a clear plastic evidence bag. We found that on arrival, Riley said, seeing me stare. It was just like that. Placed. You recognize it. No, through the plastic. I could see my name. Isla Hayes. It was not handwritten. It was typed. The font was a cold, impersonal courier, like something from an old-fashioned typewriter. We opened it, Riley said. He gestured to a second evidence bag, which held a single sheet of folded white paper. He used his pen to nudge it so I could read the contents. It was also typed. One sentence. Tell your sister truth always finds its way home. A chill, sharper than the air conditioning, moved straight up my spine. Tell your sister. This wasn't about me. This was a message, delivered through me, to Tessa. Does that mean anything to you, ma'am? I don't know. My gaze scanned the room, past the boxes, past the kitchen, to the one small bookshelf I had managed to assemble before I left, and on that bookshelf, the one, single personal item I had unpacked, a simple, silver 4x6 frame. It was face down. I didn't say anything. I just walked toward it. My feet felt heavy, detached from my body. Officer, I said. My voice was tight. He followed my gaze. What is it? That frame. I stopped just before the shelf. I didn't touch it. It was a picture of my son, Liam. From 2 years ago, he was 4 years old, smiling, missing a front tooth. Was it like that when you left this evening? Riley asked. No, I said. It was upright. I was looking at it right before I left for dinner. It wasn't just knocked over. It was placed, deliberately, an act of calculated cruelty, a gesture meant to be seen. This was not Tessa. My sister was weak. She was a follower, but she was not cruel. She would never, ever touch a picture of my son. This was not my mother. My mother was a bulldozer, not a scalpel. She would break down the door and yell. She wouldn't leave a cryptic note. This was someone else. Officer Riley's entire demeanor changed. The tired cop routine vanished, replaced by a sharp, focused attention. Okay, Ms. Hayes, this is no longer a simple B&E. This is something else. He pulled out his radio, turned his back to me, and spoke in a low voice, using codes I didn't understand. He turned back. We're going to get a forensics team in here. I want prints from that envelope, the door, the frame, everything. He looked at me, his eyes reassessing me. You said you were on deployment. What kind of work do you do? Exactly. Logistics, I said. I'm with the Civil Support Reserve, disaster relief. I coordinate supply chains. And your family, this sister, Tessa, your mother, Margot, what do they do? They run a private company, Kestrel Supply Group. They're in a similar business, private logistics contracting, emergency supplies. Federal contracts, he asked. Yes, mostly federal. Officer Riley wrote that down. He nodded slowly, as if a piece he'd been waiting for had just clicked into place. All right. Given the nature of the entry key access, the specific note, and the potential connection to a federal contractor, we're not going to handle this at the precinct level. My blood went cold. What does that mean? It means we're flagging this for a federal task force. We'll pass our initial report to the contract integrity investigators. Federal investigators? For a picture frame and a weird note. Ma'am, you can't stay here tonight, he said, his voice firm. This is a potential crime scene. We have to seal it. You can't touch anything. You'll need to find somewhere else to stay. 20 minutes later, I was standing on the sidewalk in front of my building. The humid night air felt cold on my skin. A piece of yellow police tape was stretched across my front door. 3 floors above, my keys were useless. My phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. Are you okay? Mom said you left dinner. I'm so sorry. I got sick. Had to go home. A weak, pathetic lie. A moment later, my mother called. I watched the screen. Her name glowing. Margot Vance. I pressed the button, sending it to voicemail. I was locked out, but not, I realized, by my sister. My mother had sent Tessa to change the locks, but someone else had gotten here first. Someone who knew I had a sister. Someone who had a key. Someone who turned my son's picture face down. I thought of the cold, typed words. Truth always finds its way home. It wasn't a threat, not aimed at me. I looked at Tessa's text message again, the lie staring at me from the screen. It was a warning, and the person who left it wanted me to deliver it. I did not sleep. I do not sleep when a situation is active, and the situation in my apartment was decidedly active. I spent the night in a hotel room downtown, a sterile box of beige walls and sealed windows that smelled faintly of industrial carpet cleaner. The silence was absolute. I sat in a stiff armchair, watching the headlights of late-night cars crawl across the ceiling. My phone, resting on the desk, was a small, dark block of potential threats. It held Tessa's flimsy, lying text message and a log of 3 missed calls from Margot. I had ignored them all. Responding would be engaging in the performance, and I was done performing. At 7:05 in the morning, the phone vibrated. The screen lit up with an unknown number. This one was not a Charleston area code. It was 202. Washington, D.C., my training. The part of me that runs logistics for federal disaster zones clicked into place. This was no longer a local police matter. I answered before the second ring. Isla Hayes. Ms. Hayes, this is Special Investigator Kincaid. The voice was deep, dry, and devoid of any emotion. I'm with the Contract Integrity Office. We're taking lead on the report filed by Officer Riley last night regarding your apartment. Contract Integrity Office. The name alone confirmed every cold suspicion that had formed in the dark hotel room. They were the ones who investigated fraud, waste, and abuse related to federal contracts. They were the ones who sent people like my parents to prison. I understand, I said. My voice was steady. We ran the latent fingerprints from the scene against the employee database for your building, provided by the property manager. We got a preliminary match. I waited. The air conditioner in the room clicked on. A low, mechanical hum. The prints belong to an Eli Torres. Does that name mean anything to you? Yes, I said. He's on the building's maintenance and engineering staff. I've seen him in the lobby. Mr. Torres has no criminal record, Kincaid continued, his voice like he was reading a report. We brought him in for questioning at 5 a.m. this morning. He was initially evasive, and then we requested access to his personal financial records. He complied. We found a single digital transfer, deposited yesterday afternoon at approximately 4:30 p.m. I closed my eyes. I could feel the next words coming. The transfer was for $2,000. The memo line on the transaction reads, Maintenance Service. The transfer originated from a primary business account for Kestrel Supply Group. A cold, sharp clarity settled over me. $2,000. It was a precise, insulting number. Not enough to be a life-changing bribe, but more than enough to be a felony. Who authorized the transfer? I asked, though I already knew. The digital signature on the transfer belongs to Margot Vance. My mother, I stated. It was not a question. Yes, once we presented Mr. Torres with this information, his story changed. He claims he was hired directly by Mrs. Vance. He states he was given a master key and told to enter your apartment last night. The air in my lungs felt thin. For what purpose? He claims he was hired, Kincaid said, and I heard the faint rustle of paper. To retrieve company records belonging to Mrs. Margot. He says he was told you were an employee who had improperly retained sensitive files, and that he was to retrieve them while you were at a family dinner. My apartment is my private property, I said, the words coming out low and clipped. It is not an extension of her company. What files did she mean? He doesn't know. He was just told to look for a specific hard drive and any binders marked Kestrel. He also says, Kincaid paused, that the note found on the counter was already there when he arrived. He denies any knowledge of it. Forensics confirms his prints were not on the envelope. He was cooperative. Once we had the bank transfer, the note, tell your sister truth, always finds its way home. So there was another player, someone who knew Torres was going in, or someone who had been there before him. Investigator Kincaid, I said, standing up, my voice hardening. This is my apartment. My name is on the deed. My mother hiring a building employee to enter my home under false pretenses is not a company matter. It's breaking and entering. Ms. Hayes, I understand your position, he said, and for the first time, I heard a slight edge in his voice. But you just confirmed your mother's company is a federal contractor. If she used company funds to authorize an illegal entry into a private residence to retrieve or destroy documents related to those federal contracts, this stops being a family dispute immediately. It becomes conspiracy to obstruct a federal investigation, my investigation. His words hung in the silence. My investigation. He wasn't starting one. He was in one. My mother's actions had just pointed a spotlight at her own company. I need to see the scene, I said. I need to know what he touched. My team is finished. We're releasing the seal, but I'm sending the preliminary scene photos to your email right now. I want you to look at them. Tell me if the arrangement of items means anything to you. Torres claims he was neat. I want to know if his definition of neat matches yours. My phone buzzed with an email from a secure Gov address. I opened it. The photos were stark, lit by a harsh police flash. There was the sofa, the cushions slightly askew. There was the utility closet, the door ajar. But then I saw my desk. It was a small writing desk I'd set up in the corner. The few pieces of mail I'd received, a bank statement, a utility bill, were not stolen, but fanned out, as if someone had reviewed them. A small wooden box where I kept spare keys and foreign currency was open, and then the picture of my son, Liam, face down. It was an act of violation so personal it made me sick. This was not a simple smash and grab. This was not a panicked maintenance man looking for a hard drive. This was a message. This was intentional. He turned things over, I said, my voice thick. Personal items, a picture frame. He didn't break them. He just faced them down. We noted that, Kincaid said. It's not consistent with a simple document retrieval. It's not vandalism. It feels, for lack of a better term, ritualistic, like someone clearing a story, erasing your presence. Clearing the story. My mother's entire life was one long, curated narrative. This had her fingerprints on it, even if Torres was the one who physically did it. Just as I was processing this, my phone buzzed again. A text message. It was Tessa. Isla. I'm so sorry. I really felt awful last night. Mom said you were upset. Please call me. I'm worried. The timing was perfect. The coordinated, pathetic defense. And then, as if she knew Tessa had just sent the text, my phone began to ring. Margot Vance. She was trying to redefine reality, to fix the narrative before I spoke to the police again. I took a breath. Investigator Kincaid, my mother is calling me right now. Answer it, he said, his voice suddenly sharp. Put it on speaker. Do not accuse her. Just listen. Tell her what the police found. See what she says. I did as he said. I hit the speakerphone icon. Hello, Mom? Isla. Thank God I have been sick with worry. You just vanished last night. Are you all right? Tessa told me she got sick. She's so upset she ruined your birthday. Her voice was a symphony of loving, maternal concern. It was flawless. My apartment was broken into last night, I said, my voice flat, just as I had with Kincaid, a sharp, theatrical gasp. What? My God, Isla, are you hurt? Did they take anything? That is exactly why I wanted to help you. That area. I told you it was unsafe. The police came. They found the man who did it. The silence on the line was instant. It was not a sad silence or a shocked silence. It was a cold, calculating silence. It lasted for 2 full seconds. They found him, she said, her voice a full octave lower. Already, that's fast. Who was it? A maintenance man from the building. His name is Eli Torres. I don't know who that is, she snapped, the denial too fast. It must be one of those transients. I hope they lock him up. They found the $2,000 transfer you sent him yesterday. Mom? The line went completely dead. I could hear her breathing. I could picture her in her gleaming white kitchen, her hand gripping the counter, her mind racing, processing this new, unwelcome data point. Now, you listen to me, she said, her voice dropping into the register she used to fire people. I have no idea what you are talking about. I paid an emergency invoice yesterday for Kestrel, a plumbing crisis at the warehouse. This Torres must have stolen our account information. He must be a professional thief. This is identity theft. You are exhausted. You are jet-lagged. And you are clearly not thinking straight. This is what happens. You get paranoid. It was a brilliant pivot. In 10 seconds, she had created a new reality. She was the victim. Torres was a master criminal, and I was delusional. He told the police you hired him to retrieve company files from my apartment, I said, pushing the last pin into place. That is an absurd and defamatory lie, she yelled. Files in your apartment, don't be ridiculous. I will be calling my lawyer. He is clearly a desperate man trying to blame anyone he can. I am your mother, Isla. I am the one you should be calling, not the police. You have made a terrible mistake. You need to come home, now. I'm going to the federal building to give a statement. Mom, I said. I'll let Investigator Kincaid know what you said. I hung up. I stood in the silence of the hotel room. I looked at the legal pad I'd taken from the desk. My hand, trained by years of managing complex supply lines, began to write, incident timeline, 7:45 p.m. Vance whispers to T. Vance at Café. Go and change. Her locks. Purpose pretext, a diversion. Create a domestic, non-criminal narrative. 8:05 p.m. Approx. E. Torres enters Unit 305 using master key. Authorization M. Vance. Via $2,000 wire. 8:10 p.m. Approx. Unknown party leaves typed note on counter. Motive warning. Targeted at Tessa. 8:15 p.m. Approx. E. Torres performs search. Turns items face down. Liam's photo. Purpose document retrieval, plus psychological intimidation. 8:25 p.m. Neighbor reports door ajar. Torres flees. Interrupted. 8:30 p.m. Police arrive. I stared at the last entry. Document retrieval. My mind flashed back to the month before my deployment. I had been at the Kestrel office, helping my mother's ancient office manager digitize 2 decades of records before he retired. Scan everything, Isla, Margot had demanded, and then shred it all. We need a clean slate. I scanned everything: invoices, shipping manifests, customs forms, vendor contracts. But I never shredded the originals, and I never, ever delete a backup. It's the first rule of logistics. You always keep a redundant copy until the new system is field tested for at least 6 months. The files my mother was trying to retrieve weren't just a few binders, it was her entire, unedited history. And I had the only copy. It was on a black, 2-terabyte portable hard drive. A hard drive that was, at this very moment, sitting in a shoebox labeled Old Cables in the back of my utility closet. The same closet that Torres had been photographed standing in front of, its door wide open. He had been interrupted. He had failed. The whisper at the cafe wasn't the plan. It was the alibi. The $2,000 was the real story. My mother hadn't just tried to change my locks. She had tried to erase her past, and she had just failed. I spent 2 hours at the federal building with Investigator Kincaid. It was not a conversation. It was a deposition. I sat in a small, windowless room with gray sound-absorbing panels on the walls. The air was cold and recycled. Kincaid asked questions, and I provided answers. My training in logistics is built on a simple principle. Every item has a data point, a weight, a cost, a destination, a timestamp. A system only collapses when those data points are corrupted or ignored. I gave Kincaid my data points. I told him about the hard drive, the one I had backed up from the Kestrel servers, the one I had labeled Old Cables and placed in a box in my utility closet. "Why did you keep it?" Kincaid asked, his pen poised over a legal pad. "Because the new system was untested," I said. "In my line of work, you never discard your manual backup until the new electronic system has been proven redundant. My mother wanted to shred everything before the new system was even fully implemented. That's not operational security, that's a purge." "So you kept it as a precaution?" "Yes. And when I was reviewing the files, I noticed anomalies, things that didn't match the new system's ledgers." "What kind of anomalies?" "Emergency payment authorizations, vendor contracts that seemed to be duplicated, things I flagged to review later. And this specific file, the one with your credentials. I remembered it because it was so specific. It was an expedited payment to a new vendor. It used my Civil Support Reserve ID number. I thought it was just a bizarre clerical error, a typo. Now, I think it was intentional. They needed a federal ID to bypass a system flag, and mine was on file. "We'll need that drive, Ms. Hayes, as evidence." "It's in my apartment," I said. "The apartment you still have sealed." "We'll get it," he said. "We'll get a warrant for the drive itself. Now, I want to go back to the man your mother hired, Eli Torres. He's being arraigned on a breaking and entering charge. But his story, it's solid. He's terrified of your mother." "He should be," I said. When I left the federal building, the bright, midday sun felt like an assault. I was exhausted, but my mind was clear. The situation was no longer a chaotic family drama. It was a federal case. I had a new critical path: find the truth, provide it to Kincaid, and protect my sister. I drove to the one place that felt like a neutral territory, the Kestrel Supply Group headquarters. It was not an impressive building. It was a 2-story beige stucco box in a corporate park off I-26, surrounded by other beige boxes and patches of unnaturally green grass. The entire place was designed to be forgotten, to be driven past without a second glance. The sign by the road was small and gray. It was the physical embodiment of my mother's nothing to see here philosophy. The glass doors of the lobby hissed open. Brenda, the receptionist who had been with my mother for 15 years, looked up. Her professional smile clicked into place, but her eyes went wide for a fraction of a second. She knew I wasn't on the schedule. "Isla, what a surprise. Is your mother expecting you?" Her voice was polite, but her hand was already moving toward the phone, the one with the intercom. "She is now," I said. I walked past her desk, toward the frosted glass door that led to the executive offices. "Isla, you can't just—" Brenda started. Standing up, the glass door opened before I reached it. My mother stood there. Margot Vance was in her armor, a sharp, navy blue blazer with severe shoulders. Her hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful. She was holding a sheaf of printouts. Her face was a mask of administrative authority. "Isla, you can't just barge in here. This is a place of business." "I was just at the federal building," I said, my voice quiet. The small, carpeted lobby swallowed the sound. "I was giving my statement to Investigator Kincaid. The one from the Contract Integrity Office." I watched her face. Nothing. No flicker. Just cold assessment. "I told you that man was a common thief," she said, her voice low and tight. "I am handling it. Our lawyers are already filing a suit against the building for employing him. You paid Eli Torres $2,000. Mom, I saw the bank transfer from Kestrel's account. He confessed. He told them you hired him to retrieve company documents from my apartment. My apartment, not the office. You sent him while you kept me at a birthday dinner." Brenda, frozen by her desk, suddenly became fascinated by a spot on her computer monitor. Margot didn't flinch. She stepped forward, out of the doorway, letting the glass door hiss shut behind her. She lowered her voice. "I was fixing a mistake," she hissed, the word cutting through the quiet. "A mistake you made. You took proprietary files. Isla, you have no right to them. I scanned what you told me to scan. I helped Barry digitize 20 years of paperwork before he retired. You told me to scan everything and shred it. I did the first part. I didn't do the second. You were supposed to delete the backups." Her voice was a furious whisper, a coiled snake of rage. "The new system is live. Those old files are a liability. They are internal drafts. They are flexible. They don't reflect the final reality." "They reflect the truth," I said. "Truth." She almost laughed. It was a cold, sharp, ugly sound. "This is not your world, Isla. This is not the reserves. With your rigid little rules and your checklists, this is the real world. This is how business is done. You do what you have to do to make payroll, to secure the contract, to protect your family. Everyone does it. It's just paperwork. You move a number here. You redate an invoice there. It's just noise. You are holding a bomb because you're too naive to know it's not a threat. You're protecting the family," I said, repeating her words. "By sending a stranger into my house, by having him go through my things, by having him turn over a picture of my son." "He wasn't supposed to touch anything personal," she snapped, finally losing the executive polish. "He was supposed to get the drive and leave. He was incompetent, a $2,000 idiot." She waved her hand, dismissing the entire violation as a procedural error, a line item expense gone wrong. This was the opening. She was focused on the act of the break-in. She was focused on the drive as a single object. She wasn't prepared for what I actually saw on it. I was thorough when I scanned those files. Mom, I'm a logistics coordinator. It's what I do. I don't just scan. I cross-reference. I kept my voice level. The same tone I use when I'm telling a truck driver he has the wrong manifest and he's at the wrong staging area. What are you talking about? She asked, her eyes narrowing. I saw a file, an emergency payment authorization for a new vendor. It was processed on March 30th, right before the federal quarter ended last year. It was for $150,000, and it was expedited. Vendor payments are not your concern, she said. They are when my name is on them. Her face went blank. It was not a mask this time. It was a void. It was authorized using my professional identification number, not a Kestrel employee ID, my Civil Support Reserve ID, the one I use for federal disaster clearance. It was listed right there, in the authorization box, next to a digital signature that's supposed to look like mine. I took a step closer, close enough to smell her expensive perfume, a scent like sharp chemicals and old money. But I was in Missouri during that floodplain deployment. Mom, I was on a cot in a gymnasium, dispatching water purification tablets. I never signed that paper. I held her gaze. So my question is, who has access to my credentials? Who at Kestrel Supply Group forged my signature on a federal payment document? There it was. It was not a gasp. It was not a word. It was the absence of all movement. It was half a second, maybe less. But in that half second, Margot Vance, the woman who always had the next 3 moves planned, the woman who defined reality, had no move. Her mouth opened, just slightly. Her eyes, which were always locked onto her target, flickered. They moved to the side, just for an instant, toward the hallway that led to my father's office. It was the first real crack in the armor. She wasn't just guilty of breaking and entering. She was guilty of fraud. She had used me. She had used my uniform, my clearance, my identity. She recovered. It was fast. She straightened her blazer, which hadn't even been crooked. She inhaled, pulling the mask of the CEO back into place. You are hysterical. You are making wild, dangerous accusations. You're upset about the break-in, and you are lashing out. You have no idea what you're talking about, but the damage was done. The hesitation was the confession. I said, upset. Now I'm just focused. I turned and walked away. I didn't look at Brenda, who was staring at me, her face pale. I pushed open the glass doors and stepped out into the bright, hot morning. The beige world of the corporate park seemed sharp and hostile. I got into my rental car, shut the door, and immediately pulled out my phone. I dialed the number for Investigator Kincaid. He answered on the first ring. Kincaid? This is Isla Hayes. I just spoke to my mother. She's at the Kestrel office. She's confirmed she hired Torres to get a hard drive of old company files. We anticipated that. It's not enough to prove intent to obstruct. I know, I said, my hand tightening on the steering wheel. But I have something else. She's rattled. I have a new lead. My credentials were used on Kestrel documents without my authorization. I believe my signature was forged. There was a silence on the federal agent's end. This one was different from my mother's. It was not a void. It was the sound of a hunter hearing a twig snap in the dark. Ms. Hayes, Kincaid said, his voice suddenly very, very present. That elevates this significantly. Are you willing to give a formal, sworn statement to that effect? Yes, I said, and I know exactly where the original file is. The investigation, once it began, moved with the terrifying, sterile efficiency of a federal machine. When Investigator Kincaid had my sworn statement about the forged signature, and a warrant-backed marshal had retrieved the hard drive from my apartment, the case file changed. It was no longer about a break-in. It was about Kestrel Supply Group. My hotel room had become a sterile holding cell where I waited for updates. Kincaid became my sole point of contact, a dry voice on the phone delivering data points like autopsy findings. He called early the next morning. I was already up, staring at the gray light hitting the window. "Ms. Hayes, we're running the drive," he said. No preamble. "We've confirmed the authenticity of the files you scanned. We're correlating them with Kestrel's active vendor lists. We've flagged the 3 payees you and I discussed." "The ones from the suspicious invoices?" I asked, grabbing the hotel notepad. "Northbridge Relief, Cobalt Ware, and Juniper Transit. We ran their corporate filings. They're ghosts." I held the pen, my logistics brain clicking into place. "Ghosts how?" "Shell corporations," Kincaid replied. "Cobalt Ware and Juniper Transit are registered offshore. Cayman Islands, standard money laundering architecture. They exist only as a bank account and a proxy address. Untraceable." "And Northbridge Relief?" I heard the sound of a keyboard tapping on his end. "That's the interesting one. It's domestic, registered right here in South Carolina, filed 18 months ago. The address of incorporation is a post office box in a strip mall on James Island." I waited. "A post office box," he continued. "That Kestrel Supply Group has been renting for over a decade. Your mother's company is paying a phantom company that uses her own mailbox." It was arrogant. It was so breathtakingly arrogant. "The money trail is simple, but it's designed to look complex," he said. "We're looking at the primary Kestrel accounts. The money goes out. A payment for, say, $50,000, goes to Northbridge for damaged goods replacement. The next day, Northbridge wires $49,000 to Cobalt Ware for consulting. Cobalt then wires $48,000 to Juniper Transit for international processing fees. The money travels, it gets renamed, it sheds a little skin at each stop, and then it goes dark." "Where does it stop?" I asked. "It stops," Kincaid said, and his voice was devoid of any emotion. "In a domestic high-yield investment account, that account is managed by a single legal entity, an LLC. My throat tightened. "Which one?" "It's called Management Solutions, incorporated 9 months ago. The sole signatory and managing member is listed as Tessa Vance." The notepad almost slipped from my hand. My sister, my weak, terrified sister, who couldn't even order her own dinner at the café. "Investigator, that's impossible," I said, my voice sharp. "Tessa doesn't understand accounting. She doesn't even know what an LLC is. She's not a criminal. She's just a kid. She's 24, Ms. Hayes, and her kid bank account has received $820,000 in deposits in the last 9 months. She is, on paper, the primary beneficiary of this entire scheme. Someone guided her hand to sign those papers, and we both know who that was. Margot. My mother had not just used my federal clearance to commit fraud. She had used her own daughter as the final firewall. She had built a cage of paperwork and put Tessa inside it, making her the official, legal scapegoat. I hung up the phone, my entire body humming with a cold, focused rage. I had to see her, not my mother, not yet. I had to see Tessa. I bypassed the Kestrel office and drove straight to my parents' house on Kiowa Island, the sprawling glass and steel monument to their success, built on a foundation of lies. The security guard at the community gate waved me through. Oblivious, Tessa was where I expected her to be by the pool, half hidden under a large white umbrella, her face illuminated by her phone. She looked up as my shadow fell over her, and her entire body flinched. She looked like a cornered animal. "Isla? What are you doing here? Mom said you were..." "She said you weren't feeling well." "Mom's lying," I said, my voice flat. I didn't sit. I stood over her. "Tessa, what is TV Management Solutions?" The color drained from her face. She went from pale to a ghastly chlorine-tinged white. I don't... What is that?" "It's a company, Tessa, an LLC, with your name on it, your signature, your social security number. Why did you sign it?" The tears came instantly, as they always did. It was her primary defense mechanism. I didn't know what it was." "What did she tell you?" I pushed. It was for taxes, she cried, the words tumbling out in a panicked rush. Mom said Kestrel's contracts were getting too complicated, that they needed a separate company, just a temporary thing, to handle state tax withholdings. She said it was boring. She just needed me to sign. Who gave you the pen? Who told you where to sign? She hesitated, her eyes darting to the house. Mom was there, and Dad. My stomach clenched. Dad explained it, she whispered, her voice cracking. He said it was just a holding company, that it was standard procedure for a family business. He just pointed to the lines. He had the pages flagged. I didn't read it. Isla, I swear, it was just a stack of papers. My father, Colin Vance, the man who had survived a career in the Navy and a marriage to my mother by mastering the art of strategic silence. He hadn't just been silent. He had been an active participant. He had personally handed his youngest daughter the pen to sign her life away. I had to break through the performance. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking with anger. I pulled up the first of the files Kincaid had sent me. This is the truth. Tessa, this is what you signed. Look. I showed her the screen. This is an invoice from Kestrel to the federal government. It's for a shipment of 5,000 blankets. They were paid for it. And this, I swiped, is an invoice from Northbridge Relief, dated 3 days later, for the exact same 5,000 blankets, which they claimed were damaged in transit. They were paid for it again. That's called a duplicate invoice. It's fraud. I swiped again. This is a manifest for spoiled goods. 100 generators. Kestrel claimed them as a total loss. They got the federal reimbursement and the insurance payout, but they weren't spoiled. They were sold for scrap to Cobalt Ware, which then sold them back to another relief agency at a 200% markup. I lowered the phone and looked her in the eye. And the money, Tessa, all the profit, from the fake blankets and the phantom generators, it all went here. I brought up the state filing for TOV Management Solutions. It's in your account. You're not just a signatory, you're the final destination. You are the one laundering the money for them. That note they left in my apartment. Tell your sister truth always finds its way home. That wasn't for me. It was for you. She let out a sound, a raw, howling sob that was ripped from her chest. She curled into a ball on the lounger. No. I can't. I can't go to jail. I didn't do anything. Then you have to talk, I said, my voice hard. You have to tell Investigator Kincaid. You have to tell him Mom and Dad forced you. No, she screamed, the words sharp and terrified. She looked at the house, as if my mother could hear her. I can't. If I talk, Dad will go to prison. Mom will. But Dad, it'll destroy him. He's my father. I stood up, the last shred of pity I had for her evaporating. He is, I said, and he's the one who held your hand while you signed the papers that made you a federal criminal. He's the one who chose you to be his shield. Dad chose his own path. Tessa, you need to decide if you're going to walk it for him. I left her there, weeping by the pool. I got back in my car, my mind spinning. My father was the weak link, the quiet man. He was the one who knew the regulations. He knew what he was doing. My phone rang. It was Kincaid. I can't talk, I said, my voice thick. It's my father. He's in on it. He's the one who... Hayes, slow down, Kincaid interrupted. His voice was sharp. We have new information. We've been on Kestrel's email server for the last hour. We found a new line of communication. I pulled the car to a stop under the shade of a live oak, the Spanish moss dripping down. What? Encrypted emails, between Margot Vance and a federal procurement officer, a man on the inside. His name is Daniel Keene. My blood went cold. An accomplice. He's the one who've been approving the duplicate invoices. He's the one who signed off on the spoiled goods reports. We found an email from your mother's phone sent 2 nights ago, the night of your birthday. I pictured her at the table, leaning toward Tessa. The timestamp is right after you all sat down, Kincaid said. She wrote to Keene. The situation is active. The backup is compromised. We need to accelerate payment on the Juniper contract and then suspend the account, Keene replied 2 minutes later. I'll push it through. Handle your end. She was liquidating the evidence while ordering dessert. We're moving on Keene, Kincaid said. But that's not why I'm calling. We analyzed the metadata on the big file, the one with your forged signature. The one I was scanned from my desk. The one you scanned was a copy, he said. We found the original file, the master PDF, the one that was actually created. It was created on March 30th of last year, at 2:17 p.m. I was in Missouri, I said. We know, because we ran the source IP address. He paused. It wasn't your workstation, Ms. Hayes. It wasn't your mother's computer. It wasn't your father's. My heart stopped. I knew what he was going to say before he said it. The IP address that created that forgery, Kincaid said, his voice a flat line. The workstation that uploaded your signature and attached your federal ID traces back to the Kestrel headquarters. It traces back to the computer registered to Tessa Vance. I stared through the windshield. The world tilted. Tessa, her breakdown at the pool, the tears. If I talk, Dad will go to prison. It wasn't a confession of fear. It was a threat. She wasn't protecting him. She was implicating him. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the signatory. She was the partner. She was the one who had digitally forged my name. She said it was boring paperwork. I thought of her at the cafe, her face pale. Now, she wasn't shocked at the command. She was shocked at the timing. I opened my phone's camera. I took a screenshot of the call log with Kincaid. I opened my email. I attached the screenshots I had just shown Tessa, the ledgers, the invoices, the TEV, management solutions filing. I sent them to Kincaid's secure address. I added one line of text. She knew. She's been lying this whole time. I hit send, locking the timestamp. I put the car in drive and left my sister, my father, and my family's poisoned empire behind. I drove back to my parents' house on Kiowa Island. The knowledge that Tessa was the forger, the active participant, had changed everything. My confrontation at the pool, the one I thought was a moment of truth, had just been another scene. I had been playing my role, the angry, righteous older sister, while she had been playing hers, the terrified, manipulated victim, and she had been performing for an audience of one, gauging my reactions, feeding me lies to see what I would believe. The realization left a taste like acid in my mouth. This time, I wasn't going to talk to Tessa. I was going to the source. As I pulled into the long oyster shell driveway, my phone rang. It was my mother. I answered, my voice a flat line. What? I am summoning you to this house, Margot said. No hello, no Isla. It was a command. Your father, your sister, and I are waiting in the living room. We are going to fix what you have broken. Get in here. Now. She hung up. I walked up the wide stone steps, past the perfectly manicured sweetgrass, and pushed open the heavy mahogany front door. They were arranged. That's the only word for it. They were staged. My mother, Margot, stood by the massive, unlit fireplace, her arms crossed, the absolute center of gravity in the room. My father, Colin, was in his usual wingback chair, his hands steepled, trying to look like a man of weary patience, and Tessa, she was curled on the sofa, her face red and puffy from the performance she'd given me by the pool. She was clutching a throw pillow, the picture of a broken child. Margot had already cast the play. I was the ungrateful daughter, Tessa was the innocent who needed protecting, and Colin was the tired peacemaker, caught in the middle. Well, Margot began, her voice dripping with ice. You've had a busy day. You've brought federal agents into our lives. You've terrorized your sister. Are you proud of yourself? I didn't look at Tessa. I kept my eyes on my mother. I gave my statement, I said. Investigator Kincaid has the drive. He's running the files. He knows about the shell companies. He knows about TV, management solutions. He knows about Daniel Keene. My father flinched. It was the first time I had ever seen him break character. The mention of Keene's name, the federal accomplice, was a data point he hadn't anticipated. Tessa let out a small, theatrical whimper. "You are destroying this family." Margot's voice rose, the executive polish cracking to reveal the raw, desperate anger beneath. "This is a business. These are contract disputes. It's paperwork. And you have turned it into a federal case because you are arrogant and you are naive." "You don't fear the law, Mom," I said, my voice quiet, cutting straight through her volume. "You're not afraid of prison. You're afraid of the evidence. You're afraid of the files on that drive. You're afraid of your own story." "That's enough," Colin said. It was the first time he'd spoken. His voice was low, carrying the old weight of a naval command. "Isla, this ends. Now. This is a family matter that has gotten out of hand. These investigators, they don't understand context. They don't understand how these things work." He leaned forward, dropping the peacemaker role and picking up a new one, the negotiator. "There is still time to fix this. We can settle it, quietly. We can tell them it was all a profound misunderstanding, an internal accounting error. We just need to retract the complaint. We just need to—" "You mean destroy the evidence," I said. "That's what you're asking. You want me to commit obstruction of justice, to make the drive disappear. That's how you settle it quietly." "I am asking you to be loyal," he shot back, his face reddening. "I am asking you to think about this family, about our name." And I saw it, the core of him. It wasn't about right or wrong. It wasn't even about the money. "You're not afraid of a sentence, Dad," I said, the realization landing cold and heavy. "You're afraid of dishonor. You're afraid of having Vance in the newspaper next to the word fraud. You're afraid of losing your seat at the yacht club. That's what this is about." "You ungrateful," he started, rising from his chair. "It's my fault." Tessa's voice suddenly cut through the room. She stood up, her face a mask of tragic confession. The tears were flowing again. It was a perfect, calculated performance, and she was playing it for me. "It was me," she sobbed, holding the pillow to her chest. I didn't know what I was doing, I swear. Isla? Mom she gave me a USB drive once, a few months ago. It was labeled urgent shipping costs. That's all she just told me to hold it for her, to put it somewhere safe. I didn't know what was on it. I didn't know it was bad. I was just trying to help. I watched her lie. It was a brilliant lie. It was specific. Urgent shipping costs. Plausible. Vague. It admitted to a minor. Clerical sin holding a file for her mother. It was a small sacrifice, designed to make her look naive and manipulated. It was designed to draw my fire, to make me pity her. And most importantly, it was a lie designed to pivot the entire investigation away from the real crime, away from TI, management solutions, away from the IP address, away from the digital forgery of my signature. She was good. She was so much better than I had ever known. My mother saw the opening. She rushed to Tessa's side, wrapping her in a protective embrace, her eyes blazing at me. "You see," Margot snarled, "you see what you've done. She's just a child. She did what she was told. She was being loyal, something you know nothing about." She stroked Tessa's hair. "Everything I have done, every single hard decision, every long night, it was for you. For this family. To give you and your sister a life. To build something. I did this for you." That was the moral punch, the final desperate attempt to reframe conspiracy as sacrifice. I looked at the three of them, the architect, the enabler, and the forger, all playing their parts in a desperate, crumbling drama. "No," I said. The word was quiet. It landed in the room and absorbed all the sound. "You didn't do it for us," I said, looking at my mother. "You did it for you. You did it because you are terrified of being poor. But you are even more terrified of being powerless. You didn't build a family. You built a company and staffed it with people you thought you owned." I turned my gaze to my father. "And you let her. You signed off on it. You traded your integrity for a quiet life and a good view." Finally, I looked at Tessa. She was still crying, her face buried in my mother's blazer. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "And you?" I said. "You're the most talented one of all. You just keep playing the victim." I had said everything. There was nothing left to say. The air in the room was brittle, sharp, like it would shatter if anyone spoke. The only sound was the heavy, rhythmic talk of the grandfather clock in the entryway. It sounded like a countdown, like a timer on a bomb. On the wall, above the fireplace, was the gallery of family photos, vacations, graduations, Christmas mornings, all of them perfectly framed, perfectly lit, all of them a lie. The whole wall suddenly looked tilted, skewed. "I'm done," I said. I turned my back on them. I walked out of the living room, across the marble entryway, and pulled the heavy front door open. I didn't slam it. A slam is for people who want to be heard. A slam is for people who are still fighting. I pulled it shut quietly. The latch gave a soft, final click. The sound of a lock engaging. The sound of a separation. I walked to my car, the hot, humid air of the island feeling clean for the first time. I got in and sat for a moment, my hands on the wheel. I had survived the confrontation. I had delivered the truth. My phone, sitting in the cup holder, began to buzz. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't Tessa. It was a new number, one I didn't recognize, but the Washington, D.C. area code was familiar. I answered. "Hayes, Ms. Hayes, this is Director Thorne, Civil Support Reserve." My blood went cold. This was not Kincaid. This was my boss, the head of my division. "Director, sir," I said, my posture instantly straightening. "Isla, I just got off a very troubling call with the Contract Integrity Office," he said. His voice was not friendly. It was all business. "I don't know the details, and I don't want to, but they have informed us that your name and your federal credentials have been flagged as a central component in an active, high-level fraud investigation. Sir, my credentials were stolen. They were forged. I am the one who reported it. I understand that's your position, but per federal protocol, when an operative's clearance is compromised for any reason, we have to assume it's a total loss until the investigation is complete. I have no choice. Isla, I am officially suspending your operational access. Your clearance is revoked, effective immediately." The breath left my lungs. "You are to have no contact with any CSR personnel, and you are not to access any federal networks. You are, for all intents and purposes, on administrative leave until further notice." "Sir, my deployment. Your deployment is over. You'll be hearing from our Internal Affairs Division. Goodbye, Ms. Hayes." The line clicked dead. I stared at the phone. Access suspended. My mother hadn't just hired a man to break into my apartment. She hadn't just stolen money. She hadn't just forged my name. She had taken my life, the one I had built for myself, the one part of me that Kestrel Supply Group, that she had never been able to touch. She had finally, truly, poisoned it all. The call with Director Thorne was a clean amputation. In less than 60 seconds, he had severed the single most important part of my identity. I was no longer an operator. I was no longer part of the Civil Support Reserve. I was just Isla Hayes, a person in a hotel room, a witness in a federal investigation that had just cost me my career. I sat in the rental car in the oppressive quiet of the Kiowa Island afternoon, the phone heavy and dead in my hand. I drove back to the anonymous beige hotel, my mind a blank. Gray static. The confrontation with my family felt distant, like a scene from a bad play. The suspension was the only thing that felt real. It was a physical weight, pressing the air from my lungs. I spent the rest of the day in that sterile room. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't order food. I just sat, watching the light change, my brain trying to process the loss. My entire adult life had been about logistics, about coordinating responses to chaos. I had a clearance level, a rank, a purpose. Now, I was just a civilian whose family was a criminal conspiracy. Night fell. The room was dark. save for the sliver of artificial yellow light from the hallway under the door. I must have dozed off in the armchair, because a sound jolted me awake, a soft thump, not a knock, not a footstep, a thump, like something soft but heavy hitting the door. My heart hammered against my ribs. I was instantly, terrifyingly awake. I was on the 7th floor of a hotel, a room Kincaid had secured, a room that no one in my family should have known about. I sat motionless, listening. The ice machine down the hall hummed. Faintly, I heard the ding of the elevator. Nothing else. I moved from the chair, my feet silent on the carpet. I didn't turn on a light. I walked to the door and pressed my eye to the peephole. The hallway was empty. The fisheye lens showed only the bland, patterned carpet and the opposite wall, but I could see it. On the floor, right against my door, was a white envelope, the same as the first one. My blood ran cold. Whoever this was, they knew where I was. They had bypassed hotel security. They had walked right up to my door and left a message. I waited a full minute. My breath held, listening. Nothing. Slowly, I unlatched the deadbolt. The click sounded like a gunshot in the silence. I opened the door an inch, then wider, and snatched the envelope from the floor. I closed the door, locked it, and threw the deadbolt. I leaned against the door, my heart racing. This was not a federal investigator. This was not my mother. This was someone else, someone playing a different game. I turned on the desk lamp. The envelope was identical to the one in my apartment. My name, Isla Hayes, typed in that same cold, courier font. I opened it, my fingers careful, though I knew it would be clean. Inside was not a note. It was a single sheet of paper, a printout of an email. My eyes scanned it. It was exactly what Kincaid had described the email chain between Margot Vance and the procurement officer, Daniel Keene. It was the one from my birthday night, the one where my mother wrote, "The situation is active, the backup is compromised." But there was something else. At the very bottom, in the margin, was a handwritten message. The handwriting was small, sharp, and precise, written with a fine-tipped pen. "Don't trust the meeting minutes. Check the metadata." Below that, penciled so lightly I could barely see it, was a string of digits, a phone number. My mind raced. Meeting minutes. Kincaid had found the email, but he hadn't mentioned meeting minutes. This was new. And metadata. The data about the data. The digital fingerprint. I sat at the desk, my laptop open. My CSR access was revoked, but my personal accounts were still active. The original drive was with Kincaid, but I had my own cloud, the one I had used to scan all those files for my mother, the one I never deleted. I pulled up the Kestrel archives. I found the folder for the March 30th vendor payment, the one with my forged signature, and right next to it was a file I had ignored. March 30th, vendor review, minutes, PDF. I opened it. It was a clean, formal document, detailing a 2-hour meeting between Margot, my father Colin, and the vendor Northbridge Relief. It claimed I had attended via conference call from my deployment in Missouri. It confirmed my verbal authorization for the expedited payment, citing a static-filled line, but clear assent. It was a lie. A carefully constructed, notarized lie, designed to create a paper trail that implicated me. Check the metadata. I right-clicked on the file. I went to Properties. I looked at the Details tab. My stomach dropped. The file had been created on March 30th, just as it claimed, but the metadata showed it had been last modified on October 14th, 4 months ago, 2 days before my scheduled return from deployment. Someone had gone back into the official record and added the lie about my conference call, strengthening the forgery after the fact. The IP address. I ran a lookup on the source IP listed in the file's metadata. It wasn't Kestrel headquarters. It wasn't my parents' house. The IP address traced to a small, commercial data hub in North Charleston. The address was for a row of self-storage units, a rental warehouse, the same kind of place Kestrel used for overflow, for staging supplies. This was the source of the cover-up. I leaned back, my mind finally assembling the pieces. I thought about the first note, the one left for me in my apartment. Tell your sister truth always finds its way home. I had thought it was a threat. Then, after Kincaid's discovery of Tessa's IP address, I thought it was a cruel joke. But now, what if it wasn't? What if the person leaving these notes didn't know Tessa was the forger? What if they, like I once did, believed she was just a victim? What if the note was a genuine warning, a desperate attempt to reach Tessa through me, to save her from being the anchor for the money laundering? My mind flew to the Kestrel employee files. I remembered Barry, the old accountant, and I remembered his replacement, a sharp young woman from Atlanta. She lasted 8 months. Jules Marin. She had resigned suddenly, about 4 months ago. 4 months, the same time the meeting minutes were modified. I went to the state's public records database. I searched legal filings for Charleston County. It took me less than 5 minutes. Jules Marin versus Kestrel Supply Group. It was a civil suit, a wrongful termination claim, filed 4 months ago. The details were sealed, but the docket had one public entry, a motion to compel, filed by Jules's lawyer, which mentioned a formal notice of disagreement regarding auditing procedures and refusal to certify non-compliant ledgers. Jules had seen the fraud. She had refused to sign off, and Margot had fired her. Jules Marin was my whistleblower. She was the one who had tried to warn Tessa. She was the one who had just left an email printout on my hotel room door. I looked at the phone number, the one penciled on the page. It was a burner. It had to be. I picked up my own phone. My hands were steady now. The grief over my suspension was gone, replaced by a cold, hard focus. I was an operative again, just one without a safety net. I opened a new text message. I typed in the burner number. I had to prove I was the right person, that I was the one who had seen the files, not just the one Kincaid was talking to. I thought back to the old server, the one I'd backed up. I thought of the old, inactive vendor codes Barry had complained about. I typed a short, 9-character password, JE771, an obsolete vendor code for a defunct shipping company from 1998. Only someone who had dug through the entire archive would know it. I hit send. I waited. 1 minute, 2. My phone buzzed. A reply. Stop calling. I hadn't called, but it was a confirmation. A second text came immediately after. Be at Warehouse 17, 10:40 p.m. Come alone. Bring only a recorder. Warehouse 17. The IP address. She was taking me to the source. My training screamed at me. Do not go. This is a trap. You have no backup. You are compromised. I looked at the phone. 10:40 p.m. That was in less than an hour. I dialed Kincaid. He picked up immediately. Kincaid, this is Hayes. I'm not in my hotel room. What did you do? His voice was instant, hard. The whistleblower made contact. A second time. At my hotel. They know where I am. Who is it? Where are you? I think it's a former accountant named Jules Marin. She's given me a meet. Warehouse 17 off the interstate. 10:40 p.m. That's in 50 minutes. Absolutely not, he said, his voice rising. You stand down. Hayes, you are a material witness, not an agent. You are suspended. You are not to go anywhere. That is a direct order from a federal officer. I'm not one of your agents, I said, the words tasting bitter. And I'm not on your payroll. You just had my boss make sure of that. I am a private citizen, and she's not meeting you. She's meeting me. It's a trap, Isla. Your mother is desperate. Keen is desperate. You walk in there. You're not walking out. They'll clean up the last loose end. I don't think it's a trap, I said, though my skin was crawling. I think she's terrified. She's the one who's been leaving me clues. She wants to help. That's what they want you to think. You're compromised. You're too close to this. Stay put. I'm going, I said. I'm not going to confront anyone. I'm going to listen. She told me to bring a recorder. She wants to give me testimony. I could hear him swearing, a low, furious sound. I can't protect you if you do this. I can't send a team. It's not a sanctioned operation. I know, but you can track my phone. You've probably been tracking it since I left the hotel. A beat of silence. That was a yes. I'm going in, I said. I'm not armed. I'm not wired. I'm just a witness. But if I'm not back out in 20 minutes, send everyone. I hung up before he could argue again. I got in my car and pulled out of the parking lot, heading for the interstate. The night was dark, the air thick and humid. I turned off my headlights for a moment, checking my rearview mirror. No one. I turned them back on and merged into the light traffic. I looked at the small, digital voice recorder I kept in my glove compartment, the one I used for taking logistical notes in the field. Kincaid was probably right. It was almost certainly a trap. My mother, my father, Daniel Keene, they were rats in a corner, and Tessa, the smiling, crying forger. But a trap was still information. A trap, by its very nature, reveals the predator. It reveals their tactics, their location, and their desperation. A trap only works if you step in it. I wasn't planning on stepping in. I was planning on recording it. The industrial park was a dead zone, a collection of massive, windowless tin boxes set far back from the highway. The rain, which had been a fine mist in the city, was a driving horizontal sheet out here. It hammered the roof of the rental car. Warehouse 17 was at the very end of a dark, unpaved service road. The high-voltage lamps that were supposed to light the lot were either broken or failing. One, directly over the unit, flickered in a manic, buzzing rhythm, casting strobe-like shadows over the wet asphalt. The air smelled of wet gravel and ozone. It was 10:39 p.m. This was a perfect trap. Every instinct I had, every bit of training from my disaster zone deployments, screamed at me. This was an ambush point, no visibility, one way in, one way out, and predictable cover. I pulled the car to a stop about 50 yards from the unit, doused the headlights, and killed the engine. The only sound was the rain. Kincaid was right. This was insane. I was a civilian. My clearance revoked. Walking into a dark warehouse to meet a terrified whistleblower who was being hunted by my family and a corrupt federal agent, I took the small, black digital recorder from the glove compartment. I clicked the power button. The small red light glowed. I held it for a second, then clicked it again. Putting it on standby, I put it in the deep breast pocket of my jacket. I got out of the car. The rain hit me instantly, cold and hard, plastering my hair to my head in seconds. I didn't run. I walked, my footsteps silent on the soaked ground, my eyes scanning the shadows, the tops of the containers, the gaps between the buildings. Nothing. The bay door for Warehouse 17 was a massive corrugated steel wall, but the small service door cut into its side was open. Just a crack, a dark vertical line. I pushed it open. The hinges were well oiled. It made no sound. The inside of the warehouse was vast and cold. It smelled of mildew, diesel fuel, and cardboard. Racks of metal shelving, 3 stories high, disappeared into the darkness above. The only light came from the single flickering lamp outside, which punched through the high, dirty windows, scattering moving shadows. "Jules," I called out, my voice sounding small in the space. A rustle. From deep within the racks. "You came." The voice was thin, reedy, and vibrating with fear. A woman stepped out from behind a towering pallet of shrink-wrapped boxes. It was Jules Marin. I recognized her from the Kestrel employee newsletter, but she was different. The woman in the photo had been bright, smiling, wearing a sharp blazer. The woman in front of me was a ghost. She was gaunt, her skin pale. She was wearing a dark hoodie and jeans, and she clutched an accordion file to her chest as if it were a life preserver. "I'm not an idiot," she said, her eyes darting to the door and back. "I'm not a hero. I don't want to go to prison for Margot Vance, and I don't want your sister to, either." You knew," I asked. "About Tessa. You knew she was involved." "Of course," she said, her voice sharp with a bitter, nervous energy. "I saw it. I was the one who had to process the paperwork for her little LLC. I'm the one who had to watch your mother and father walk her through the signatory forms, telling her it was just standard tax procedure, They were so proud of her, proud of how trusting she was. They called her the easy one, the obedient one. It was disgusting. So the note, I said, the one in my apartment. Tell your sister truth always finds its way home. I left that, she said, her eyes filling with tears of frustration. I still had a master key card from my admin days. I thought if you knew, you could stop her. You could protect her. I thought she was just a victim, a shield. She is, I said, a shield, but she's not a victim. Jules, she's the one who forged my signature. Jules's face, already pale, went ashen. What? No, the IP address. I traced the original forgery to your desk, the one you used when you visited. She used my desk, I interrupted. Kincaid found the source IP. It was Tessa's workstation. She was covering her tracks with my tracks. She's a partner, not a pawn. Jules looked like she was going to be sick. She leaned against the metal shelf. Oh, my God. I got it all wrong. I've been trying to save the person who was holding the gun. She shook her head, a desperate, frantic motion. Then this is all that's left, the truth. She held out the accordion file. This is why they fired me. This is why they're hunting me. It's everything. The real shipping manifests. The ones that show the damaged goods were never damaged. The duplicate invoices Keene approved. The wire transfer codes to the offshore accounts. This is the whole chain. From Kestrel, to Keene, to your sister. She pushed it toward me. This is the damaged goods cycle. Margot created it. She'd get a federal contract for, say, 10,000 blankets. She'd ship them. She'd get paid. Then, 3 days later, Daniel Keene would file a spoilage report, saying the shipment was contaminated. Kestrel would get a full reimbursement and an insurance payout. Then, they'd sell the spoiled blankets, which were perfectly fine, through one of the shell companies to another state, at a profit. They were getting paid 3 times for one product, and Keene got 10% of everything. I took the file. It was heavy. It was the entire conspiracy, in paper. Why me? I asked, my voice low. Why not go to the FBI? I tried, she whispered, her voice cracking. I went to the local office. I gave them a statement, and the next day, Margot called me into her office and fired me for performance issues. Keene has people everywhere. He knew. I've been living out of my car for a month. I left the notes because you were the only one who had the original files. You were the only one who could corroborate my story. I was betting on you. Just as the words left her mouth, a high, bright beam of light sliced through the darkness, painting the entire warehouse interior in a blinding white glare. Headlights, a heavy truck engine, too close, growled, and then cut. No, Jules breathed, her face collapsing in pure terror. No, he followed me. He must have... The sound of 2 car doors slamming shut, heavy footsteps on the wet gravel outside. Jules. My mother's voice. It wasn't a question. It was a command. It echoed in the vast metal space. Jules was frozen, her back pressed against the shelves. The service door was kicked open, slamming against the inside wall. 3 figures stood silhouetted in the doorway, framed by the blinding headlights. My mother, Margot, in the center, my father, Colin, to her left, a heavy, silent presence, and a man I didn't recognize to her right, stocky, nervous, wearing a suit jacket in the rain, Daniel Keene. Jules, my mother said again, her voice calm, as if she were at a board meeting. You are making another terrible, terrible mistake. Give me the file. It's over. Margot, Jules stammered, her voice barely audible. I gave it to her. My mother's eyes snapped to me. She hadn't seen me in the shadows. Her gaze was like a physical blow. It was not anger. It was not surprise. It was pure, cold resolution. The look of an operator who has just identified the final target. Isla, she said, as if this were just another inconvenient Tuesday. Of course, the family disappointment. We don't have time for this. Margot, Daniel Keene snapped, his voice high and tight with panic. He stepped past her into the light. "The feds are already all over my office. We need the papers. Now, get the box." "Jules," my mother said, ignoring him. Her eyes locked on me. "I can still fix this. I can give you a severance, a very generous one, enough to go somewhere new. We can say this was all a misunderstanding. Just give me the file." This was it, the moment. I kept the accordion file in my left hand, with my right. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out the small digital recorder. I held it up, shoulder high, where the light from the headlights could catch it. I pressed the standby button. The small red light began to glow, steady and bright. "Everyone is on the mic," I said, my voice clear and loud, echoing in the warehouse. "Say it again. Mom, tell Investigator Kincaid exactly how you're going to fix this. Tell him how much you're offering for that severance. Tell him about the misunderstanding." A perfect, shocked silence. Daniel Keene froze. My father took a half step back, into the shadow. My mother's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. Her eyes were fixed on the glowing red light. The standoff lasted for 5 seconds, a lifetime. It was just the sound of the rain, the buzz of the failing lamp, and the red light of the recorder, and then another sound. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. A siren. Kincaid. He had been tracking me. He was coming. The sound broke the spell. Daniel Keene panicked. "Cops! It's a setup! I'm gone!" He turned to run. "No!" Margot screamed. She moved, but she wasn't moving toward me. She wasn't moving toward Keene. She lunged at Jules. She grabbed the front of Jules's hoodie, slamming her back against the metal shelves. "You did this. You give me the file." "It's not. I don't have it," Jules screamed, clawing at my mother's hands. "She has it," my father yelled, pointing at me. Margot released Jules and turned, her eyes wild, finally seeing the accordion file in my hand. She scrambled, a desperate, undignified lunge, not at me, but at the file. Her hand shot out, her nails raking my wrist as she grabbed the cardboard flap. I held on. She ripped at it. Jules, seeing her chance, seeing the sirens getting closer, bolted for the door. She ran past my father, past Keene, and out into the rain. My mother snarled, a low animal sound, and yanked the file with all her strength. The cardboard tore. Half of the file ripped away in her hand, a sheaf of papers spilling onto the wet concrete floor. She scrambled for them, scooping them up, clutching the wet, ruined documents to her chest. The sirens were deafening now. Turning into the service road, blue and red lights began to strobe against the rain, mixing with the flickering white lamp. My father grabbed my mother's arm. "Margot, we have to go now." He dragged her, clutching her bundle of papers, back toward the car. Daniel Keene was already in the passenger seat, screaming at them. They piled in. The engine roared. The truck threw a plume of mud and gravel as it fishtailed, its high beams catching me one last time in their glare. Then they were gone, their taillights disappearing into the rain. I stood there, my heart hammering. The red light on my recorder was still glowing. I looked down at my hand. I was still holding the other half of the ruined accordion file, but it was empty. She had taken the papers. I was left with nothing but a piece of torn cardboard and a recording. The first black and white cruiser skidded to a stop in front of the warehouse, its doors flying open. "Federal agent, don't move." I dropped the torn file and slowly raised my hands. The tactical team hit the warehouse like a wave. I was pushed back, behind the line, my hands still raised. Kincaid was the first one through the door after his men, his face a mask of cold fury. "Where are they?" He yelled at me over the rain and the shouting. "They fled," I said, my voice shaking from the adrenaline. The truck, a dark pickup, my mother, my father, and Daniel Keene. The evidence. She took it. She ripped the file. She took the papers. Damn it. He slammed his hand on the hood of the cruiser. "That's the case. Without those originals." "But I have this," I said, holding out the small, black digital recorder. The red light was still glowing. "It's all here." Her voice, Keen's, my father's. She offered Jules a bribe. Keen admitted the feds were onto him. My father told her to run. It's a full confession. It's witness intimidation. Conspiracy. Aiding and abetting. It's all on here. Kincaid's eyes locked on the recorder. He took it from my hand gently, as if it were a delicate bomb. "And," I said, pulling out my phone. She was too late. Jules was terrified when I got here. She showed me the worst of it first. Just in case, I photographed the first 12 pages. The Northbridge invoices, the duplicate manifests, the wire transfer codes to TV, management solutions. With my sister's name on it, I airdropped the high-resolution images to his phone. He stared at the screen, a thin, cold smile touching his lips. "They didn't just escalate to witness intimidation. Hayes," he said. "They escalated to fleeing a federal officer, and you just gave me the entire case back. Get in the car. We're moving." I wasn't an operative. I was a witness. But I was the only witness who knew all the players. I got into my own rental, my hands slick on the wheel. I stayed on his tail. Kincaid's radio was now patched to a speaker in his car. The comms were a chaotic flood of information. "We have a bolo on a dark pickup. Last seen heading south on I-26. License plate. Unit 3, negative. We have a hit on Keen's cell. He's not in the truck. He's pinging from a separate location, downtown, by the port." They split. Kincaid's voice crackled. "Vance is in the truck, running interference. A decoy. Keen and Margot are on foot, or in a different vehicle. My father, the quiet man, he was the decoy. Driving the truck to draw the police away, sacrificing himself so Margot could escape with Keen." My own phone buzzed, vibrating in the cup holder. "An unknown number," I answered, putting it on speaker. Isla. Oh my God. Where are you?" It was Tessa. She was hysterical. Her voice a reedy, panicked wail. "I'm with the police. Tessa, where are you?" "I'm at the house. The Kiowa house. Mom called me. She sounded crazy. She was screaming. She said you did this. She said you brought the police. That you betrayed the family, that you're a traitor." The words, the accusation, they felt dull. They were just part of the script. "Listen to me." "Tessa," I said, my voice cold and hard. My eyes locked on the taillights of Kincaid's car. "She's lying. I didn't betray the family. I betrayed the con. There's a difference. Now, what did she tell you to do?" "She told me to pack a bag. She said to get my passport. She told me where she kept the cash. In the floor safe. She said she was coming to get me. That we were leaving." My blood ran cold. She wasn't just fleeing. She was trying to take Tessa with her, trying to make her a fugitive, an active accomplice. "Tessa, you do not move," I commanded, my voice dropping into my old CSR field tone. "Do not pack a bag. Do not touch the passport. Do not, under any circumstances, touch that cash. It's a trap. She's not saving you. She's making you an accessory. If you run, you will spend the rest of your life in prison. Kincaid has federal agents monitoring that house right now. If you touch that money, you're done. This is your only chance to save yourself. Stay put. Do you understand me?" A choked, terrified sob. "Yes. Oh God. Yes." I hung up. Kincaid called me. "We're close. Keen's phone is stationary. A warehouse on the water. Unit 24. He's not running. He's digging in." "What's Margot doing?" "She just made her last mistake. We got an alert from FinCEN. She tried to initiate a wire transfer, $2 million, from a Kestrel operations account to the Cobalt Ware shell in the Caymans. She's trying to empty the coffers. Did it go through?" "No. We put a freeze on everything the second you gave me that recorder. Her assets, Kestrel's, the TSV, management account. It's all locked. But the attempt, it's a separate federal crime. It's a perfect time-stamped confession of her intent to flee the country. We have everything. We pulled up to the port warehouse. It was different from the last one. Older, brick, smelling of salt and fish. Kincaid's team fanned out, setting a perimeter in the darkness. "What's he doing?" I whispered, crouched behind the car with him. "This must be his personal stash," Kincaid said. "The original paper files he kept, the ones he used to blackmail your mother. He's destroying the evidence." As he said it, a flicker of orange light danced behind a high, grimy window. "He's lighting a fire." "He's not just destroying evidence," I said, a sudden, sick realization dawning. "He's destroying his only leverage. He's not planning on getting arrested. He's cleaning house before he disappears." Kincaid gave the signal. "Breach, go, go." The team hit the door, shouting, the clang of a flashbang, and then a different sound, a high-pitched whoosh. An agent ran back out, his face soaked. "Sir, he's gone." He lit a pile of documents in a metal drum, set off the fire suppression system. "It's a mess. The place is flooded. The papers are just ink and pulp. He's not here." Slipped out a back hatch onto the pier. Kincaid swore, slamming his fist into his palm. "Damn it, he's in the wind, and so is Margot." We were back at the ad hoc command post in my hotel, which was now buzzing with agents. It was almost dawn. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving a low, heavy exhaustion. An analyst approached Kincaid, holding an iPad. "Sir, we've been monitoring Kestrel's internal network. This was just pushed to the server from an external, encrypted IP. It's a packet of predated emails, addressed to Margot Vance's legal team. It looks like it was sent from Tessa Vance's workstation." Kincaid took the iPad and handed it to me. "Read this." "Hayes." I read it. My stomach turned to ice. It was a complete, fabricated narrative. A series of fake emails, written from me to my mother and Tessa, me, complaining about my role, me, being ambitious, me, suggesting more flexible accounting to prove my value, me, offering to leverage my CSR credentials, to help expedite payments and show initiative. It was a perfect, self-contained story, painting me as a disgruntled, rogue employee. It even included the forged digital signature, presented as a file I had helpfully created for them. This was their final move, their poison pill, a dead man's switch, to frame me for the entire conspiracy. "It's a lie," I said, my voice hollow. "It's a good lie," Kincaid said, his face grim. "It's your word against theirs. It makes a jury pause. It muddies everything." "No, it doesn't," I said. The exhaustion vanished, replaced by a final, sharp surge of anger. I opened my laptop. I went back to my own cloud, to the original files, the ones I had scanned for Barry, long before any of this. "Here," I said, pulling up the original PDF of the March 30th vendor contract, the clean one, the one before Tessa had modified it. "This is the original. You can't fake a file's creation timestamp. But more importantly," I ran a checksum on the file. A string of numbers and letters appeared. "Here's the SHA-256 hash. It's a digital fingerprint. It's a mathematical proof that this file is the bit-for-bit original from last year. Now," I pointed to the iPad, "run the hash on the file they just uploaded. I guarantee it won't match. It's a forgery. Metadata doesn't lie. They didn't just frame me. They created the very evidence that will convict them." Kincaid looked at the hash string, then at me. For the first time, he almost smiled. "That's the nail," he said. "That's the ballgame." He turned to his team. "Warrants are active for Daniel Keene, Margot Vance, and Colin Vance. They are now officially fugitives. We've got Keene's face plastered at every airport and port. We've got an APB on Colin's truck. And we've just told Margot's lawyer that she and Tessa Vance have 2 hours to surrender, or they'll be added to the fugitive list." The lawyer called back 10 minutes later. Margot had refused. She and Colin had gone dark. Then, the break. An agent monitoring social media looked up, his eyes wide. "Sir, you need to see this. We got a hit, a burner account on a streaming platform. It just posted a public message. He read it aloud. Kestrel execs meeting at Port Warehouse 34. Midnight tonight. Source says third party is inside. Holding evidence. Live streaming. Kincaid stared at the screen. A leak. No, I said. Standing up. I knew my mother's tactics. I knew her arrogance. That's not a leak. That's an invitation. She's not running. She's trying to get Keen and my father in the same room. She's trying to consolidate her power. To silence the last witness. She thinks she's setting a trap. A trap for who? Kincaid asked. For Keen. For my father. For whoever this third party is. Kincaid looked at the address. She's not setting a trap. She's walking into one. Let's go. This ends tonight. This was not a warehouse. It was a tomb. We moved in silently. A ghost unit of federal agents surrounding the perimeter of Warehouse 34. The rain had become a relentless, driving curtain, turning the port into a maze of black water and slick, groaning metal. The live stream leak had been Margot's fatal overplay. She had intended to lure Keen, and maybe my father, into one final, contained meeting. She thought she was the puppet master. She never imagined that Kincaid would be the one reading the invitation. He had me posted on the perimeter, with 2 agents. You are a witness. Hayes, you are not to engage. Do you understand me? I understand, I said, but I was watching the building. Warehouse 34, a long brick-faced transit shed, its paint peeling, the main roll-up door was closed. But a single, man-sized service door was propped open a few inches, spilling a weak yellow light onto the wet loading dock. From inside, I could hear them. The voices were sharp, cutting through the sound of the rain. They were already arguing. My mother, my father, and Daniel Keen. I looked at the agent next to me. I'm going in. Ma'am, you are ordered to stay. I'm not armed, I said, my voice a low, hard whisper. Kincaid has the audio from the last time. He needs the visual. He needs the final confession. They're my family. They'll talk to me. They'll just try to shoot you. I didn't wait for his reply. I slipped from the cover of a shipping container and moved low and fast across the 10 yards of open asphalt. I reached the wall, my back pressed against the cold, wet brick. Their voices were clear now. Can't just disappear. The accounts are frozen. Margot, that was Keen, his voice high and shredded with panic. We wouldn't have to disappear if you had handled the files, my mother shot back. This is not my fault, my father's voice boomed. This is yours. You and your greed. You pushed too hard. You brought Isla into it. I brought Isla in to control her. I took a breath. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I hit the video record button. The small, red icon glowed. I held the phone, screen down, in my left hand. I stepped through the open door. The inside was a cavern of shadows and weak, yellow work lights, piles of canvas-draped cargo, the smell of creosote and salt water. The 3 of them were in the center, a tight, vicious circle. They froze when they saw me. Keen looked like a trapped animal. My father looked broken, defeated, and my mother, her face was a mask of cold, absolute fury. You, she spat, you just couldn't let it go. Could you? I didn't answer her. I walked slowly, deliberately, toward an empty metal shelving unit that separated us. I kept my hands open, away from my body. I placed my phone on a low shelf, the camera lens pointing directly at them. The red light was bright in the dimness. We're going to call everything by its right name, I said. My voice was calm. It echoed slightly. The recording is live. So is the audio. This is for the federal record. Keen looked at the phone, and then at me. His face collapsing. You stupid. He ran a hand through his wet hair. It doesn't matter. It's all gone. If she already gave the feds the original, burning this, he kicked a small, smoldering metal trash can at his feet. Is useless. They already have it all. It was a confession, a direct confirmation that the original files, the ones I had scanned, were the real evidence. My mother ignored him. Her eyes were locked on me. She was still trying to manage the narrative. "I did what I had to do," she said, her voice dropping, trying to find that old, persuasive, maternal tone. "Everything I built for my children. I did it for you, Isla. I did it for Tessa. I did it so you would never know what it was like to have nothing." It was her last, most polished performance. The martyr. "No," I said, stepping out from behind the shelf, my hands still open. "You did it because you're terrified of being poor, but you're more terrified of being powerless. You didn't do it for us. You did it for yourself." "Isla, stop," my father pleaded. His face was gray. Just stop. It's done. We can say it was all an error. Maybe we can blame Jules, that accountant." She was disgruntled. It was his final confession, a willingness to frame an innocent woman to save his own skin. I just shook my head. "It's all on the recording, Dad." And then, in the distance, the first, faint sound of a siren. It was planned. Kincaid was collapsing the perimeter. Keene heard it. His head snapped toward the door. "Police! You set us up. You set me up." He was desperate. He wasn't thinking about files or lawyers. He was thinking about the red light on my phone. He lunged, not at me, but at the shelf, his hand grabbing for the phone. I didn't think. I reacted. It was pure muscle memory. 8 months of deployment, of close quarters logistics, of managing chaotic situations. As he lunged, I pivoted, not to fight him, but to move with his momentum. I used my shoulder to check his arm, turning his lunge into a stumble. He went sprawling past me, crashing into the metal shelf. The phone was knocked from the shelf. It hit the concrete floor with a hard clack. It slid, screen down, but the camera was still pointed at the center of the room. The red light was still on. Keene scrambled to his feet, but I was already between him and the phone. "It doesn't matter, Daniel," I said. I reached into the waterproof pocket of my jacket. I pulled out a small plastic USB drive, my backup, my personal contingency. "You burned the wrong copies. You framed me with the wrong files. I have the metadata. I have the hashes. I have the original logon files from Barry's retirement. I have the proof." I held up the drive. "That Tessa's workstation created the forgery of my signature." My mother's face went absolutely blank. She had been prepared for my anger. She had been prepared for Kincaid. She had not been prepared for my data. She had never, ever respected my work, and in the end, it was my work that had undone her. She stared at the small, black piece of plastic in my hand. She didn't speak for 5 seconds. My father was crying, his head in his hands. Daniel Keene was frozen, staring at the door. My mother just looked at me, the architect of her own ruin. Then, she gave a single, sharp nod. "Fine," she said. Her voice was flat, empty. All the performance was gone. I approved the signature. I told Tessa to do it. It was my order. It was the final surrender. The world exploded in light. The massive roll-up door of the warehouse screeched as it shot upward, revealing a wall of cars, flashing blue and red, blinding white takedown lights. Federal agents, hands in the air now. Kincaid's voice, agents poured in, weapons raised, fanning out, securing the room. Daniel Keene dropped to his knees, his hands laced behind his head. He was sobbing. My father, Colin Vance, just sat on a crate. He put his hands up, his face a mask of empty, weary relief. It was over. 2 agents cuffed Keene, 2 more went to my father, and 2 approached my mother. She didn't move. She stood tall, her back straight, her chin up, even as they holstered their weapons and pulled out the zip ties. She just watched me. Her eyes were not angry. They were uncomprehending, filled with a profound, cold disbelief. Not that she had been caught, but that I had been the one to do it, that I had been the one to finally, definitively, cut the cord. Kincaid walked straight to me, his eyes on the phone, which was still recording on the floor. He picked it up, You got it, I asked. My voice was a whisper. He looked at the footage, then at the USB drive in my other hand. He nodded. We got it. Hayes, we got it all. The audio from the first warehouse, the video from this one, your hash data. It's a closed case. He gestured to one of his agents. Escort Ms. Hayes from the scene. I let the agent guide me, past my father, past Keene. I didn't look at my mother. I walked out of the warehouse, into the chaos of the flashing lights. The rain was easing. It was just a soft, clean drizzle now. I stood by a cruiser, the adrenaline finally leaving my body, replaced by an exhaustion so deep I felt like I could sleep for a year. I looked back at the warehouse. The agent was sliding the heavy service door shut. On it was a massive, industrial-grade padlock, an old iron lock, rusted from the salt air. I thought of the café, my birthday, my mother's whisper. While everyone's here, go and change. Her locks. I finally understood. She hadn't been talking about the lock on my apartment door. That was just the pretext, the excuse, the cover story. The lock she was trying to change, the one she sent Tessa to tamper with, was the lock on the truth, the lock on the files, the lock of silence that had kept the whole corrupt family machine running for 20 years. She had tried to change the lock, and I had just picked it. The door slid shut with a final, heavy thud. The screen goes black. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please don't forget to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories. Like this video. And if you really want to support us, hit that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.